The way never acts, and yet nothing is left undone. Laozi, Tao Te Ching. Read that again. Not the way does very little, not the way acts slowly. Nothing is left undone. Most people hear a line like that and think it's a riddle, or worse, an excuse, a permission slip to sit still and call it wisdom. It isn't, because the idea buried in that sentence is one of the strangest, most demanding, most misunderstood ideas ever written down. It comes from a tradition more than 2,000 years old, and it claims something that sounds impossible, that the most effective thing you will ever do is learn how to stop forcing. The Taoists had a name for it, 2 words, Wu Wei. And by the end of this video, I want you to understand why doing nothing, real nothing, the kind they meant, is harder than doing everything you're doing right now. Let's kill the biggest misunderstanding first. Wu Wei is usually translated as non-action or non-doing. Literally, the characters mean something close to without doing. And that translation has done more damage than almost any other in Eastern philosophy. Because when a stressed, exhausted modern person hears non-action, they hear one thing: give up, stop trying, lie down, let the world happen to you. That is not what the Taoists meant, not even close. Here's the thing they saw that we keep missing. There are 2 completely different kinds of action in this world. The first kind is forcing, grinding, pushing against the grain of things. The Chinese even had a word for this, Wu Wei, deliberate, willful action. The action of someone who has already decided how the world should go and is now trying to bend reality to match. And the second kind, Wu Wei, is action that moves with the grain. Action so aligned with the situation that it stops feeling like effort at all. Not the absence of movement, the absence of friction. A bird doesn't strain to fly, a fish doesn't fight the water, and a master doesn't fight their craft. That's Wu Wei. It looks like nothing is happening, but everything is happening. It's just happening without war. So when Lao Tzu says the way never acts, yet nothing is left undone, he isn't describing laziness, he's describing the highest form of skill there is. To understand it, you have to know where it comes from. Around the 4th century before Christ, in a China torn apart by constant war, a body of writing appeared that would become the foundation of Taoism. The most famous piece is the Tao Te Ching, traditionally attributed to a figure called Laozi, the Old Master. 81 short chapters, barely 5,000 characters. No arguments, no lectures, just images. Water, valleys, empty vessels, uncarved wood. And running through it, again and again, is this idea of Wu Wei. A century or so later came another voice, Zhuangzi. Where Lao Tzu was quiet and cryptic, Zhuangzi told stories, strange ones, funny ones, butchers and craftsmen and butterflies. And it's Zhuangzi who gives us the single greatest picture of what Wu Wei actually looks like when a human being does it. I want to tell you that story, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. There was a cook, and he was cutting apart an ox for his lord. But the way he did it stopped everyone who watched. Every movement of his hand, every lean of his shoulder, every step of his foot, it flowed. The blade moved through the animal with a sound like music. It looked less like butchery and more like a dance. His lord watched, amazed, and said, "How can your skill possibly reach such heights?" And the cook put down his knife. And he said something that has echoed for 2,000 years. He said, "What I care about is not skill. What I care about is the way." When I first started, he said, all I could see was the whole ox, a solid, impossible mass. Everywhere I looked, ox. After 3 years, I stopped seeing it that way. And now I don't look with my eyes at all. I meet the ox with something deeper. I follow the natural lines already there inside it, the hollows, the gaps, the spaces between the joints. I never force my way through bone. I move only through the openings that are already open. And then he said the line that gives the whole thing away. A bad cook, he said, hacks his way through, so he wrecks a knife every month. An ordinary cook cuts, so he wears out a knife every year. I have used this same knife for 19 years. It has taken apart thousands of oxen, and the blade is as sharp as the day it left the stone. His lord sat back and said, "From the words of my cook, I have learned how to live. Now, sit with why that's brilliant. Because it's not about butchery, it never was. The ox is your life, your work, your problems, every hard, tangled, resistant thing you have to move through. And there are 2 ways to do it. You can hack, you can force, you can attack every obstacle head-on, throw your whole weight against the thickest part of the bone, and call the exhaustion afterward hard work. And it works, sort of. The ordinary cook still gets the ox apart, but look what it costs him. The blade is you, your energy, your attention, your health, your mind. Every time you force your way through something you could have flowed around, you dull the edge a little more. And most people spend their entire lives hacking, wearing themselves down against problems that had a gap in them the whole time, a natural line, an easier way through, if only they'd slowed down enough to find it. The cook's secret wasn't that he worked less. Watch him again, he's fully in it, every muscle, every sense, completely alive. His secret was that he stopped fighting the ox. He found where reality was already willing to give, and he went there. That is Wu Wei. Not doing nothing, doing everything without the war. Which brings us to the uncomfortable part, the part the title promised. If Wu Wei is effortless, why do I keep saying it's harder than doing everything? Because effortless is not the same as easy. Think about what the cook actually had to overcome. For 3 years, all he could see was the whole ox. 3 years of being lost in the mass of it. He didn't reach that flow by relaxing. He reached it by paying such fierce, patient attention for so long that the forcing finally fell away on its own. You cannot skip that. Nobody hands you Wu Wei. The Taoists understood this. The effortless state on the far side is real, but the only road to it runs straight through years of deliberate, difficult, forcing effort. The paradox is brutal. You have to try, and try hard for a very long time, until one day you've earned the right to stop trying. And here's the harder part still. Even once you know the way, restraint is agony for a human being, because everything in you screams to force it. When the plan is falling apart, doing nothing feels like death. When someone is wrong about you, staying silent feels impossible. When the numbers aren't moving, when the results won't come, when the thing you want is not arriving on your schedule, every instinct says, push harder, grip tighter, force it. To not do To feel the pull of the current and choose not to fight it. To trust the gap instead of attacking the bone. That takes more strength than forcing ever did. Any fool can strain. Straining is easy. It feels productive. It lets you off the hook because at least you did something. Knowing when not to strain and holding that line while your whole body begs you to grab the rock and pull, that is the hardest discipline there is. That's why the quiet ones so often win. Not because they did less, because they knew exactly when to do nothing and had the strength to actually do it. So take this out of ancient China and put it where you actually live. You already know the ox. It's the thing you've been hacking at. The relationship you keep trying to control. The career you're trying to force into shape a year faster than it wants to go. The version of yourself you're grinding toward at 5 a.m. with a dull, chipped blade, wondering why you're so tired. Wu Wei doesn't tell you to abandon it. It asks you one question. Where are you hacking at bone that has a gap right next to it? Where are you forcing an outcome you were never able to control in the first place? Other people's opinions, the timing of a result, the pace of your own growth, and calling that exhaustion effort. The water doesn't argue with the rock. It doesn't hold a grudge. It doesn't stop. It simply goes around, under, over, through the smallest crack. And given enough time, it wears the rock down to sand. Not by force, by refusing to fight. Softness outlasts hardness. Yielding outlasts forcing. This is not weakness. It is the longest game there is, and it is almost always the winning one. So let's go back to where we started. The way never acts, and yet nothing is left undone. You've heard it wrong your whole life. It was never about doing nothing. It's about doing only what's needed. Moving only where the world is already willing to move. Spending your energy like the cook spent his blade, carefully, precisely, through the gaps, so that after 19 years, after a whole life of it, your edge is still sharp. Everyone around you is hacking, straining, wearing themselves down against problems that had an opening the whole time. And they'll tell you that's what hard work looks like. But you know something now. You know that the highest skill doesn't look like war. It looks like water. It looks like a dance. It looks, from the outside, almost like doing nothing at all. The hardest thing you will ever learn is when to stop pushing. And the day you learn it, nothing will be left undone. Some things are not solved by force. They are solved by flow.